Stop, Jackson heard, realizing it was his wife's friend Becky, who everyone calls Bex. He had returned home from his Saturday golf game feeling sick with Montezuma's revenge. Nearly having an accident on the fourth hole, he decided it was best to stay close to a bathroom for the rest of the day. Peering through the open sliding patio door's screen, he spotted his wife and three of her friends relaxing by the pool, sipping mimosas. Deanna, his wife, lay on her lounger facing away from the door, with Bex to her right, Steph in front of her, and Cheryl with an S to her left, lying on a towel by the pool. Jackson stayed hidden so he could listen in without being seen. I'm sorry, Bex, but it's all I think about. I've imagined it, and I can't stop thinking about how it'll feel inside me. You all talk about doing it, his wife replied. Plus, I'll keep it quiet so Jackson won't find out. I won't be like Candace. Candace was known as the most promiscuous friend who entertained the ladies with her tales of wild closeness. He'll catch on. They always do. You know what happened to me, and Candace is full of it. I've been divorced for 3 years, and I regret every foolish choice I made because of her. She was my downfall, and she'll be yours too, Bex responded sadly. Jackson overheard his wife say, It'll be a one-time thing. I need to find out if a well-endowed man is as amazing as Candace claims. It's not what you think, Cheryl chimed in. Cheryl had been married about as long as Jackson and Diana had. Back in college, I hooked up with a guy who was well-endowed. Then I met Bert and realized he could love me better. The well-endowed guy was boring beyond that one aspect. His life was just sports, nothing romantic or interesting. She paused to take a drink. That was all there was to him. Steph, who's never been married, warned, I told you when you wanted to hang out with us on girls' night not to fall for any guy you might dance with. They go to clubs looking for closeness, not a dance partner. And now you've started something with this guy. Like it or not, you're seeing him. I'm not seeing him. We just have drinks, dance, and fun, Di responded, hesitating. Until last night. He's been bragging about his size and wanting to sleep with me. I resisted until he showed me, and now I can't stop wanting him. She grinned. Just thinking about it turns me on. Bex leaned closer to Deanna with a serious tone. Listen, Candace isn't living some dream with amazing closeness every night. She's lonely, just like me. I can see you're on the same path. I'd do anything for a guy like Jackson. He's kind, successful in his business, and a great dad. Standing up, she wrapped her towel tighter. If you let Jackson go, I'll do whatever I can to be with him. Di looked at her friend earnestly. I need to do this. Just once, and that's it. Bex replied with a sad look. It's never just once. I've been there, I know. Jackson's stomach troubles were forgotten as he listened intently to the conversation. Anger surged through him. His wife, his partner for over 2 decades, was planning to sleep with some guy she met at a club. That's absurd, he thought. In a burst of fury, he forcefully pushed the screen door off its rail as he stomped over to the poolside. Di felt a strong grip on her arm, pulling her up abruptly. She turned to see her husband's enraged face visible to all the women. With a swift motion, he yanked her wedding and engagement rings off her left hand. My rings! She exclaimed. There! You're not my wife anymore, so go be with your lover tonight. His rage boiled over as he flung the rings over the roof toward the street. Go to your big tool boyfriend! Trembling with anger, he continued. I heard everything. I knew you weren't being faithful on girls' night, but I can't believe you have a serious relationship with some loser you met at a bar. Di collapsed to the ground in tears. Steph was the first to stand, attempting to calm Jackson. Take it easy, Jax. Di hasn't really done anything that wrong. That's nonsense, he retorted. To heck with all of you. You knew what would happen when you started taking her out with you. Especially you, Steph. He pointed accusingly at her. Since you're all here, you can help this woman pack her things and get out of my house now. Cheryl flashed her manipulative smile. Come on, you don't mean that. She gently placed her hand on his chest, but suddenly found herself stumbling backward into the pool as Jackson pushed her. I'm leaving for an hour, and I don't want this woman in my house when I get back. Guess what? Steph has a new roommate. With that, Jackson stormed back into the house, then emerged again through the door. I heard you, Bex. I'm excited for our dates, but I won't sleep with you until after the divorce. Are you okay with losing these friendships? Bex straightened up. Absolutely, not a problem, she grinned. He seemed like a great catch. She believed she had learned from her past mistakes, although it was too late back then. A week later, Di's wish came true. During girls' night on Friday, Bex observed Di meeting her lover. She recognized him as one of those sleazy guys who prey on married women at clubs. He used to be roommates with the man who had seduced her years ago, a decision she regretted deeply. She knew Dai's life would change drastically tonight, just like hers had. She felt guilty for not trying harder to stop Dai, but she knew once Dai made up her mind, it was final. Bex regretted not taking photos of Dai's actions sooner. She had been documenting her friend's behavior during girls' nights to hopefully prevent her from making the same mistake. Now it seemed like she was taking these pictures to steal Dai's husband for herself. Maybe she was, she thought. That night, Dai didn't dance with her date. Instead, she glanced at her friends and said she would catch up with them later. With that, she greeted the man, and they left the club together. In his unkempt apartment, Dai felt nervous excitement. This was the first time she had been with another man besides Jackson in over 20 years. As she approached him, her lover noticed her bare fingers. "Put your rings back on. I want to see them on your hand while you're doing it," he demanded. Dai explained, "I can't. Jackson took them when he threw me out last weekend." "Why'd he do that? Are you cheating with someone else?" he questioned. She defended herself. "No, he heard me talking to my friends about wanting you, so he snatched them off and threw me out." Seeing his interest wane, she wondered if Bex was right that he only liked married women for the thrill. "Don't you want to have closeness?" He hesitated, considering her attractiveness, but the allure was fading. Without a husband, she might cling to him, and he wasn't interested in that. "Here's the deal. I'll give you what you want tonight, my big Johnson. But then you gotta go. I don't want a relationship. I do it with married women because I don't want attachments." He wasn't as fit as Jackson, but that didn't matter to her. She knew what she desired. After a while, he pushed her aside and led her to the bed. Without moment's notice, he pushed his tool as far in as he could. Dai gasped in pain. "How was it? You loved it," he smirked, heading to the bathroom. Dai followed, sitting on the toilet while he cleaned up. She felt disappointed. Despite his size, the experience left her unsatisfied, much like her first time. As she headed back to Steph's apartment, she realized it had only been an hour since she left the club with him. If she had been with Jackson, they'd be cuddling after making love. Feeling sad and alone, tears streamed down Dai's cheeks as she took an Uber back to Steph's empty place. Jackson spent the week getting ready for his new life. Some might call him cold, but that's how he handled problems, compartmentalizing them. With a successful business, he could delegate tasks and focus on what mattered. He didn't want revenge in the divorce settlement. Despite over 2 decades together, Dai had changed, seeking girl time every week. Sometimes he grew tired of the constant presence of her friends around the pool. While Dai was experiencing her big one, Jackson was 2 hours away having dinner with their son at college. He wanted to tell him about the divorce man to man, preempting potential future issues. He knew his son might see things differently. The next day, Saturday, Jackson returned home after lunch with his son. He hoped the visit hadn't affected the boy's grades. Meanwhile, Steph grilled Dai about her night with her lover. Disappointed, Dai admitted it wasn't what she expected after hearing Candace's and Steph's tales. She had hoped for great closeness but ended up sore. Steph insisted she needed the right partner, and she had just the guys in mind. She had dated 2 guys who knew about each other, and she believed she could arrange a double date with them tonight. After dinner and dancing, the 2 couples returned to Steph's apartment. Steph had her choice of the 2 men, and her second pick was more than happy to be with Dai. They fooled around on the sofa. Soon, she felt disappointed as he continued his clumsy attempts. Was this her future? Unfulfilling encounters with men who only cared about their own pleasure? She rolled him off and headed to the bathroom to shower, feeling dirty. In 2 nights, she had been with 2 different men and felt let down by both. As she lathered up under the warm water, she felt a cool breeze and realized someone had joined her in the shower. He grabbed her, but she couldn't push him away due to his size. Desperate, she grabbed a soap dish and smashed it into his head, causing him to slump to the floor. She climbed onto the toilet seat and screamed for Steph. As Diana stood on the toilet seat waiting for rescue, Jackson was fast asleep on the sofa, where he had been since he kicked her out. He could sleep there, but he couldn't bring himself to sleep in their bed, fearing she might have been with other men there. He woke up to a knock at the door, dressed only in boxers and a t-shirt, feeling groggy. If he had looked through the peephole, he might not have opened the door, but he did. And there stood Candace, known as the Queen of Promiscuity. Physically, Candace was stunning, with a petite, great figure. She owned her own fitness franchise, specializing in training overweight individuals. However, Jackson always saw her as a beautiful exterior with a rotten core. It was past 1 a.m. and she was dressed in a revealing black dress, flaunting her assets. Jackson frowned at her arrival. What do you want? She flashed her smile, a tactic that usually worked. I thought you might need some company tonight, and I'm here to offer my services. She took hold of it, stroking it while speaking to him. Very nice, Jax. This will do just fine. Jackson firmly removed Candace's hand, shaking his head. Not happening. Go home. She adopted a playful expression. Come on. I heard you and Di split, so why not have a little fun? Pushing her back, Jackson shut the door firmly in Candace's face, ignoring her smile as she walked away. The next morning, Jackson did something he hadn't done in 2 decades. He cleaned up and went to church. Though he was Baptist by upbringing, he opted for a nearby non-denominational service. Arriving early, he chose a seat near the back, avoiding inconveniencing others. The sermon touched on letting God guide one to become a better person and help others, stirring something within Jackson. Despite his success, he felt a lack of fulfillment in giving back to others. Perhaps mentoring youth could make a difference, he pondered. Feeling uplifted, he returned home to find Deanna waiting on the front steps, visibly upset. She stood and began shouting at him, demanding to know where he had been and why she couldn't get inside. He calmly responded, I went to church. Instead of fooling around, maybe you should consider finding a church too. There are plenty of men there, I'm sure. After unlocking the door, he entered, and Di followed. She wasted no time expressing her desire to return home, citing her discomfort with Steph's lifestyle. No, you can't move back here. I've released you from your vows, which you were going to break anyway, if you haven't already. How was your encounter with the big tool? Jackson interrupted before Di could finish. I didn't, Di started, but Jackson cut her off. Don't lie. I know you too well. I can tell you've been with him since you left. Di remembered when Jackson warned her about going to girls' night with her friend last year. He had made it clear it would lead to infidelity sooner or later. She didn't want to admit he was right. He emphasized that it was wrong for married people to act single, as it could jeopardize his business. As Di tried to hug him, he stopped her. Tomorrow, I'll have Tracy, my new assistant, send you a list of affordable apartments. You can take the bedroom furniture and anything else you need. Tears streaming down her face, Di pleaded, I can't survive on my own. You have to help me. Jackson remained resolute. You didn't have to work. I make enough money. But you insisted on a job. Yet you've saved nothing. You spend your entire paycheck immediately. That has to change. As a divorcee, you'll need to manage your finances. Many families live on less than what you earn. He escorted her to her car. You'll be served on Wednesday at work, unless you prefer to visit Abe's office on Tuesday for a quieter serving. Di received the papers at work on Wednesday, still hoping Jackson wouldn't go through with the divorce. She'd been with him for over 2 decades and usually got her way. But she was learning that a Jackson who loves you is different from a Jackson who chooses not to love you. Wednesday night, alcohol flowed at Cheryl's house as the girls gathered to cheer up Di. With too much booze and no food, Candace arrived with more alcohol, unaware of the somber mood. I didn't know this was a party. As they drank more, tongues loosened, and Candace revealed her intention towards Jackson. The drunken ladies burst into laughter. Cheryl chimed in, Bex has dibs on that. Ha! Candace stood up, running her hands down her figure. Does she think her mommy bod can compete with this? Confessing her failed attempt to seduce Jackson, Candace remarked, What were you thinking, Di? Your man's got nice tool. I grabbed it. I know quality when I feel it. Maybe I'll marry Jax. I wouldn't have to work. Just keep him satisfied and I'd live the good life. She smirked. Or maybe I'll marry him, enjoy him for a bit, then divorce him. You know I can't stay faithful. Diana was starting to grasp the gravity of her actions for the first time. As Di continued drinking, Jackson greeted Bex and her kids at the front door, holding a casserole dish. Thought you might need a friend tonight. They dined on the patio, discussing Jackson's feelings since he asked Di to leave. Meanwhile, Bex's children played basketball in the backyard. I'm sure you know the others are with her now to help cope with being served today. I chose to be here with you instead. Thank you for being there for me, Jackson expressed his gratitude. Bex didn't stay long as her children had school the next day. Before leaving, she gave Jackson a gentle kiss on the lips. He smiled as they parted, a kiss filled with temptation that lingered just the right amount of time. Between 1:30 a.m. and 2 a.m., Jackson was awakened by a drunken call from Diana. She alternated between crying and cursing him, questioning his love for her. To Jackson, it seemed Di didn't love him enough to avoid going out to clubs and engaging in who-knows-what activities. After her third call, he turned off his ringer, deciding to talk to her once she sobered up tomorrow. At 11, Jackson dialed her number, but she didn't apologize for the drunken calls from last night. He questioned why she hadn't returned Tracy's call about the apartments she found. Ignoring his question, she expressed her desire to return home. No, our marriage is done since you've been with other men. You couldn't even wait until you were served before seeking another guy. I hope it was worth it. A whole week of you couldn't resist trying out other men. There was a knock at the door, and Jackson saw Bex holding a paper bag. He gestured to wait as he finished the call. Deanna, you wanted other men, so I'm giving you the single life you seem to want. Sign the papers. If you don't meet with Tracy tomorrow, I'll pick an apartment for you. I'll cover the first 2 months' rent. That's it. Gotta go. Bex just brought me lunch. He hung up. By 6 in the evening, Stephanie was fed up with Di's complaints. Girl, you gotta face reality. Bex isn't stealing your man. Let's be real. You wanted that guy's bigger tool, and you got it. But what did Jackson get? He realized he can't give you what you want after 20 years of marriage. Sorry, but no man wants that. The Jackson I know won't take you back. Di didn't want to hear it. But you didn't stop me. Steph gave her a look. Why would I? When you want something, you go for it. That's who you are. And besides, I'm no saint. You messed up and now you want Jackson to act like it never happened. Be glad he doesn't know everything you've done. Change into something better. Let's cheer you up. 2 weeks had passed and Di had experienced disappointment with several new partners. On Monday evening after work, Bert and Cheryl accompanied Di to the apartment Jackson had arranged for her. He had furnished it with her favorite master bedroom set and items from their home. The place was freshly painted, cleaned, and even the fridge was stocked. Bert, being the good husband, carried Di's clothes inside as Cheryl requested. He hung up the clothes that needed it and opened the plastic tubs containing folded items. Later, he returned with food, and they all spent the evening together to keep Di company on her first night there. Cheryl understood that Di was trying to prolong the divorce, hoping Jackson would miss her terribly and take her back to their ideal life. She kept quiet about Bex having frequent lunches with Jackson, knowing it would only make things worse for Di. Cheryl proposed a housewarming girls' night at Di's new place on Friday. Bex picked up the call from Cheryl. Hey sis, we're having a gathering at Di's new place on Friday. Please join us. I haven't seen you in a while. She hesitated. The kids' dad hasn't been able to take them for the last few months. He's been working out of town, so I haven't had much freedom to go out. It was a white lie. She did visit Jackson occasionally, but never stayed long. She was just checking up on him, knowing he wouldn't cross any boundaries. I'll see if I can arrange for someone to watch them on Friday. They're teens, Mama Bear. They can manage on their own. Sure, but I might want my security deposit back someday. They could wreck the place. Jackson enjoyed his lunches with Bex. She knew he rarely left his office for lunch, always bringing his own food. That dedication likely contributed to his success. It was the little things like that. Bex worked just 2 blocks away from Jackson's business. They didn't meet every day, but he appreciated her company. She was actually the only friend of Di's that he genuinely liked. He put up with the others just to keep the peace. During their Thursday lunch, Bex asked Jackson if he could watch the kids so she could attend Di's housewarming. He agreed without hesitation. Jackson liked spending time with Beck's children. 3 boys, aged 13, 15, and 16, regarded Jackson as a cool uncle. They played basketball together, which helped fill the void left by not playing with his own son. Bex didn't need to drop off the kids because Jackson picked them up and took them to the batting cages and go-kart racing. Taking a deep breath, Bex knocked on the door. Come in, came the response from inside. Peeking through the doorway, she saw Cheryl and Steph with raised wine glasses. But before she could step inside, Candace barged past her announcing, Hey ladies! She was already quite tipsy. As the toilet flushed, Di entered the room. There was an unspoken tension between Bex and Di, one that wouldn't last the evening. As more wine and whiskey shots were consumed, inhibitions faded away. Drunk Cheryl proposed that they all help Di reconcile with Jackson. This stung Bex deeply. She had genuine feelings for Jackson, not just Jax. Tipsy Candace chimed in, suggesting that Di couldn't win Jackson back until she slept with him. She claimed that when she touched it, it felt just right in her hands. Not too big, not too small, just perfect. Bex called out Candace for her crude talk, but Candace shot back, mocking Bex for her supposed plans to snag Jackson. She insinuated that Bex, as a single mother, was looking for a new daddy for her kids and suggested that Jackson, being an empty nester, wouldn't want to raise someone else's children. Bex knew her friends could be superficial, a fact her ex often pointed out, but hearing Candace talk about Jackson like that was too much. Before Bex could respond, Di grabbed her hair and yelled at her to stay away from Jackson, accusing her of coming from his office during lunch breaks. Pushed toward the door by Di, Bex finally spoke her mind to her friends for the first time. She acknowledged that Jackson wasn't Di's anymore. Di had thrown that away by choosing other men over him. Bex reminded them of the importance of fidelity, calling out Cheryl's casual attitude towards cheating, despite her husband's admiration for her. I learned that lesson the hard way. You never experienced having kids because you didn't want to change your body, but that's something you'll never understand. Steph is so superficial and cruel that she'll never find a husband. No man wants a woman like her. And Candace, if every tool that you had could stick out of your body, you'd look like a porcupine. After a moment of silence. I've been holding back on pursuing Jackson, trying to give him space, but not anymore. I'm going after your husband, Di. Once he's mine, he won't even remember any of you. Finding a good husband is tough, but he'll never regret being with me, I guarantee that. With that, she slammed the door and left. Bex drove home and sat in her empty apartment for a while. Her boys were with Jackson, and she didn't want to be alone. She decided to call Jackson. He told her to come down, as they were scheduled for the batting cages soon. He joked about his sore butt from the go-karts. She found Jackson and her kids at the batting cage. She sat on the benches outside while her older sons played. Jackson was coaching her youngest. She smiled as she watched them bond. Jackson grinned when he noticed her watching. He motioned for her to join them inside. Without saying a word, he handed her a batting helmet. She initially declined, but her kids insisted. Standing with the bat on her shoulder, she swung at the pitches, missing each one. Jackson stepped behind her, adjusting her stance. She felt his presence close behind her. He guided her through the next pitch, and to her surprise, she made contact. Not a hit, but not a miss either. With Jackson's support, she felt safe and her heart raced with anticipation. She never quite managed to hit the baseball right, but it was the most enjoyable time she'd had in years. Laughing until tears rolled down her cheeks, she knew this night would always hold a special place in her heart, as the moment she realized she loved Jackson. Following Bex's car back to her apartment, Jackson wore a wide grin. Despite her insistence that he didn't need to follow them home, he was happy to help wrangle her boys and their belongings into the apartment. The next morning, he casually asked if she'd like to grab breakfast together, and she eagerly agreed. On his way back home, Jackson got a text from Bert informing him that the girls had ended up in the drunk tank after causing traffic trouble while clubbing. He decided they needed a lesson and opted not to bail them out, especially if Diana was driving. With a DUI, their insurance rates would skyrocket. Over breakfast, Jackson and Bex continued to connect as a couple. Bex recounted the events of the previous evening at Di's place, including her confrontation with the girls. Jackson chuckled, realizing why she left early and secretly hoping it was for him. It felt selfish, but everyone desires a bit of attention sometimes. Wanting to be up front, Jackson confessed, "Last night holding you at the batting cages felt right. Maybe you felt it too." Bex nodded, admitting, "I felt safe and cared for," her cheeks flushing. "To be honest, I've had a crush on you for years, but now I think I'm in love with you. I know you're married, but I'll wait for you as long as it takes." Reaching into her handbag, she retrieved an envelope. "I know my past, and I understand if you have doubts. But after you asked Di to leave and I told you I'd do anything to be with you, I knew I needed to show my commitment. I got an STD test the following Monday to prove I'm clean. I haven't been intimate with anyone in over a year, being completely honest." He admired her honesty. "Becky, I've seen you make mistakes. And I was there during the tough times before your divorce. I've always known you to be a good person, but I couldn't understand why you kept going out at night, especially when it led to your divorce." She glanced down. "Right now, you might not get it, and I hope you never have to, but when you're divorced with kids, you don't get to go on dates. But you still want to feel wanted, even if you know you're not someone's forever. A woman needs to feel desired, and I wanted closeness. It's as simple as that." Looking back up, she continued, "But I learned from that. Being a good mother became more important than hooking up. I thought that if I improved myself, maybe I'd attract a better kind of guy." "Why did you let Diana join you on your nights out?" he inquired, knowing she'd be honest. Reaching across the table, she took his hands. "I tried to stop her, but, once she sets her mind to something, it's happening. Even though I wasn't planning to leave with a guy, I felt I needed to be there to prevent her from making the same mistakes I did." He grinned at her. "You're not too great at that job." As they held hands, he spoke sincerely. I feel like we have a connection. And when I said I'd date you that day on the patio, I meant it. You've always been the best of her friends, and I enjoy our conversations. I look forward to our lunches and calls. You keep me in check when I'm being dumb, and you always make me laugh. Plus, you're a fantastic mom. Bex appeared concerned as she spoke. Since we're being honest, I feel the same way. But look at me. I'm not like the others. I don't go to the gym. They criticize my mom bod. I don't have the money for that. It's tough to feed 3 teenage boys on my income. Child support barely covers their food expenses. He gently squeezed her hands. You look fantastic with your pretty and curvy figure. I really like curves, he said, grinning mischievously. I can't wait to see more of them. The server brought their bill and grinned as she overheard their conversation. He grabbed the check from the table as they got up. Turning to her, he asked, Do you have any plans for today? Bex leaned into him, giving him a light kiss. Well, there's something I haven't done in a long time. It's been like over a year. In his boxers, Jackson stood in front of his bathroom mirror, feeling nervous. He was about to be close with a woman other than his soon-to-be ex-wife for the first time in over 25 years. After discovering Dai's infidelity, he felt insecure. But he found Bex incredibly attractive. His dad would have called her a woman with curves in all the right places. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door. He expected to find her waiting for him on the bed, but she surprised him by being under the covers with them pulled up to her chin. Jackson was slightly disappointed. He had wanted to unwrap her. As he pulled back the covers and joined Bex in bed, he expressed his desire. You can unwrap me another time, she said softly. This is new for me, and I want to feel more comfortable. I don't want you to be disappointed in my body. Jackson reassured her, You could never disappoint me with your body. Regardless of how my ex looks, she looks that way for herself, not for me. I've always been turned on by curvy girls. He trailed his hand along her curves, from her hips to her plump bottom. Candace was right, it was a good size. Thick and just the right length, which made her smile. It wasn't like in the movies, but it was above average. For a moment, she thought of Dai. Thanks, Dai, for thinking you could find better than this. That was amazing, she said, a tear forming in her eye. It had been too long since she experienced something like that. Actually, she had never experienced anything quite like that before. Her ex and most of the men she'd been with since the divorce never made an effort to please her. As they lay together, Jackson held her close, cherishing the moment. He felt like a real man again. He hadn't realized how much Diana had affected him until now, but he knew it had left its mark. They drifted off to sleep in each other's arms. When Jackson woke up first, he gazed affectionately at Rebecca. His perception of her had shifted. Bex was Diana's friend, but Rebecca was a mature woman he might be falling in love with. He enjoyed her company and cherished spending time with her and her boys. He hadn't realized how much he missed being a father figure. Rebecca, he said for the first time, I'm not sure where this will lead, but I don't want to be with anyone else but you. I don't want to assume you feel the same, but I hope you do. She kissed him back warmly. I'd love that. Rebecca's smile faded when she noticed the time on the alarm clock. Oh no, it's past 1. The boys must be worried. Jackson got out of bed and got a glimpse of her body for the first time, and he was pleased. Despite any insecurities she might have had about her weight, he found her perfect. Can I use your shower? Sure thing, he replied, briefly considering joining her in the shower, but realizing that being a responsible mom was a priority. I'd like you to bring the boys back in a couple of hours. I want to make sure they're okay with me dating their mom, he requested. She smiled appreciatively at his thoughtfulness. Upon Rebecca's return with her sons, Jackson had burgers grilled and a table set with potato salad, beans, and condiments. After they finished eating, Jackson took the boys aside while she cleaned up the table mess. They gathered around the fire pit. Boys, I want to have a serious talk with you. I care a lot about your mom, and I'd like to start seeing her romantically if that's okay with you. Your opinion is important to me, because I've grown fond of all of you as well. Can I date your mom? The 3 boys exchanged looks, not accustomed to being asked such a question. None of them spoke to each other. The younger 2 glanced at the oldest brother, who nodded in agreement. The oldest, taking on a sense of responsibility, looked at Jackson. Yes, sir, we'd like that. Jackson rose to his feet, and the boys followed suit as he gathered them into a group hug. As they hugged, Jackson heard the youngest ask, Are you going to be our new dad? He hugged them tighter. If that's what you want, I'd be honored. Rebecca got emotional as she watched the scene unfold. Her boys needed a positive male influence in their lives just as much as she did. She grabbed a napkin to wipe away her tears as she saw the youngest boy grab a basketball from the shed and head towards the court with Jackson and his brothers for their usual 2-on-2 game. While she was taking out the trash from their meal, Rebecca heard the doorbell ring. "Jackson, someone's at the door!" she called out, but he didn't hear her over the sounds of the basketball game. She dried her hands on a kitchen towel and went inside the house to answer the door. As she opened the door, she was surprised to find Di standing there. Rebecca stumbled backward and ended up sitting on the floor when Di pushed her way inside. "What are you doing in my house?" Di snapped at her. Rebecca got back on her feet and pushed Di back a step. "This isn't your house anymore. It belongs to Jackson. You live in an apartment over on Richard Street. Remember? You kicked me out of it last night." Ignoring her, Di brushed past Rebecca, searching for Jackson. "Where's my husband? I've been in jail all night. He should have come to bail me out." Rebecca stepped in front of Di, confronting her face to face. "Why do you think he would bail you out of jail?" "He's my husband. It's his job," Di insisted. "No, it's not his job to bail you out of jail for public intoxication. It's your responsibility to stay out of trouble," Rebecca said firmly, growing frustrated with her old friend. As Di searched through the rooms, Rebecca followed her, determined not to let her get away with whatever she was planning. "I know why you're here, but it's not going to work. You pushed him away, and I tried to support him so he wouldn't end up like my ex did, spiraling into darkness." She stood with her hands on her hips, meeting Di's gaze directly. "You're in the same spot I was 3 years ago. You messed up and lost your husband because you did things a married woman shouldn't do. Now you'll face the consequences. Loneliness hits hard. Every night you'll come home to a cold, quiet apartment, missing the sounds of a loving family. I was lucky. I had my kids. But your son's grown and your husband's leaving you. It's going to be tough being lonely and 45, spending weeknights at home, waiting for the weekends to find some man, any man, to keep you warm." Di stared back at Bex. Rebecca went on, offering some dating advice. "Sure, you might find guys with bigger tools, but from what I've seen, they're too focused on themselves and their tools to offer anything else to a woman besides act itself. They often struggle to keep jobs or have issues at work because they're chasing other women. They're only good for a quick act. You're attractive, so you'll find plenty of men willing to sleep with you, but those guys at the bar just want to get laid. You won't find a new husband there. Plus, at your age, most of those drunks have trouble getting it up." "Steph makes it sound like you've been with dozens of guys in the last month, so I figure it's probably closer to 10 or 12. Since you're here, I bet none of them, including the guy with the big Johnson who started this mess, have been good lovers." Di stayed silent, but her lack of response spoke volumes. "Di, I didn't plan for this, but this morning I made love to Jackson," Rebecca confessed. "We both know something. We share something. We both know he's an amazing lover. So caring, so passionate." She smiled to herself. "That's something really special." Di started to cry. "I'm so stupid. You're right. He's wonderful, and he's the best lover I've ever had. I forgot that. I thought I could have an adventure he'd never find out about, and experience something better. That once-in-a-lifetime kind of closeness." She paused, her voice dropping. "But I already had that," she whispered. Bex walked to the patio door. "Jackson's outside with the boys. I can go get him." Di stood next to her friend, watching Jackson make a perfect shot in basketball. "He's such a great dad. I forgot how much I enjoyed watching him play," she remarked, glancing at her friend. "Do you love him?" "I do," Bex confessed. "Today was our first time together. I'm not sure if he loves me like I do him, but if he chooses me, I'll spend my life making him happy. Menopause is coming, and I know it'll change things. But Jackson seems like the type who'll understand and work through it with me." Deanna teared up. "I came here hoping to win him back, to be with him one more time, even if it's just out of pity. But if he's making love to you, it's over. He's moving on. I know him well enough to see that." Turning towards the door, Di paused. "Let him know I'll get a lawyer and sign the papers." Rebecca informed Jackson about Di's visit and the impending legal proceedings. He helped her and the boys get ready to leave. Before they drove off, he kissed her gently and closed the car door. 7 months later, Di requested a brief meeting with Jackson and his attorney before their court appearance. Jackson understood Deanna needed closure. She apologized for her selfishness and resentment, admitting she'd forgotten how amazing he was. She regretted spending time with the girls, knowing he never approved. "Deanna, I tried to warn you that married women can't act single. I knew you weren't faithful on girls' nights. People saw you even if you didn't notice. I received pictures and messages over the years, but I ignored them because I loved you. But enough was enough. When I heard you planning to cheat, I knew it was over. If you didn't want me, you could have someone else, but I won't tolerate disrespect anymore. He rose to his feet. Take care, Deanna. You'll always have a place in my life. We share a son, so there'll be occasions like birthdays and holidays where we'll cross paths. I'll be polite and friendly. If there's an emergency, I'll be there. But we'll never share a bed again. I've always been faithful to one woman, and that won't change. With that, he closed the door, leaving Diana in tears. Rebecca stood by Jackson near the basketball court. It marked their 5th anniversary, and she needed a moment of calm away from the festivities inside. Jackson's son had quickly bonded with her own boys, and now he was married with a child on the way, back home to work with his father. Her eldest had graduated recently and was eager to start his own business. The middle one had pursued plumbing after trade school. Despite the celebration, she felt a pang knowing her youngest was about to leave for college. Nearly 24 years as a mom, and now she faced being an empty nester and a grandmother. Jackson hugged her tightly, understanding the bittersweet moment as her youngest prepared to leave the nest. He smiled warmly at her. Remember, I love you. She picked up the basketball. I won't ever forget. Dribbling the ball, she glanced at Jackson. Think the boys want to play? He grinned back, and they watched as their sons poured out of the patio door, ready to join in.